Hey everyone! Welcome back to Easy English Talk, where we learn English through simple, natural, and interesting conversations. I'm Jason, and I'm really happy you're here with us today. Julia, how are you doing?
Hi, Jason. I'm doing great. And I'm excited about today's topic because I think almost everyone has experienced this problem. You study something, you feel like you understand it perfectly, and then just a few hours later, you suddenly think, wait a minute, what was that word again?
Oh, absolutely. And sometimes it happens in the funniest situations. You walk into a room because you need something. You stop in the middle of the room, and suddenly your brain says, "Sorry, I have no idea why you are here."
Exactly. But forgetting things does not always mean you have a bad memory. The good news is that there are simple ways to train your brain and make information easier to remember.
So, in today's episode, we're going to talk about how to improve your memory, especially if you are learning English. Stay with us because we'll share simple techniques you can start using today.
And near the end, we'll also give you a quick memory challenge. So get ready to test yourself.
Okay, Julia. Before we talk about how to improve our memory, I think we should first understand something very important. Why do we forget things in the first place? Because sometimes I can remember a conversation I had 10 years ago, but I can't remember where I put my phone 5 minutes ago.
That is so true, Jason. And I think one of the biggest reasons we forget things is because we are not really paying attention when we first receive the information. Our brains are constantly receiving messages, sounds, images, conversations, and thousands of little details. So if we are distracted, tired, stressed, or thinking about something else, the information may never become a strong memory.
That makes a lot of sense. So, sometimes we think, my memory is terrible, when actually we didn't properly notice or focus on the information in the first place. This happens a lot when people are learning English. For example, you might hear a new English word, understand its meaning for a moment, and then forget it the next day because you never really used it.
Exactly. Another problem is trying to remember too much information at one time. If you study 50 new English words in one sitting, your brain may become overwhelmed, and many of those words may disappear from your memory very quickly.
So, forgetting is actually a normal part of learning. The important question is not, why can't I remember everything, but rather, what can I do to help my brain remember better?
And that is exactly what we're going to discover today. Because with the right habits, simple practice, and a little patience, you can make remembering information much easier.
All right, Julia. Let's move to our first memory tip. And honestly, this one sounds very simple, but it can make a huge difference. Pay attention before you try to remember something. A lot of people try to memorize information while they are checking their phone, thinking about something else, listening to music, or worrying about what they need to do next. And then they wonder why they can't remember what they just learned.
Exactly, Jason. Your brain needs your attention before it can properly store new information. Think about meeting someone for the first time. If the person says, "Hi, my name is Daniel," but you are looking at your phone and thinking about your next appointment, you might forget the name almost immediately. But if you look at the person, listen carefully, and repeat, "Nice to meet you, Daniel," you give your brain a much better chance to remember that name.
And this is especially useful for English learners. When you hear a new word, don't just let the sound pass by. Stop for a moment. Listen carefully to the pronunciation. Notice the meaning, and say the word yourself. For example, if you learn the word confident, don't simply read it and move on. Say, I want to become more confident when I speak English.
I love that example because you are doing more than just hearing a word. You are giving your brain something meaningful to remember.
Exactly. So here's a simple rule. Stop, focus, listen, and repeat. Before you try to remember something, make sure you are actually paying attention to it first.
And remember, Jason, sometimes better memory doesn't require more study. It simply requires better attention.
Now let's move to our second tip. And this one is especially helpful for anyone learning English. Use repetition and spaced review. Julia, I think many learners make the same mistake here. They learn a new word once, feel happy because they remember it, and then they never look at that word again. A few days later, the word suddenly feels completely new.
Yes, Jason, I've seen that happen so many times. But repetition helps your brain understand that information is important. When you see, hear, say, and use the same information several times, your brain gradually creates a stronger memory of it.
And there's an even better way to repeat information. Instead of studying the same word for 30 minutes in one sitting, you can review it for a few minutes today, then review it again later, then tomorrow, and again a few days later. This is called spaced review, and it gives your brain time to process the information between each review.
For example, imagine you learn 5 new English words today. Improve, confident, remember, practice, and successful. You could read them and say them aloud today. Tomorrow, try to remember their meanings without looking at your notes. 2 or 3 days later, use each word in a sentence. And at the end of the week, test yourself again.
That sounds much easier than trying to memorize 50 words in one night.
Exactly. And the goal is not to study for hours. Even 5 or 10 minutes of regular review can be much more useful than one long study session followed by several days of no practice.
So, don't worry if you forget a new word after learning it. Forgetting gives you another opportunity to review it and make the memory stronger.
Right. Learn it, review it, use it, and come back to it later. That simple habit can help information stay in your memory for much longer.
All right, Julia. Now let's talk about our third memory tip. And this one is really interesting because your brain loves connections. Instead of trying to memorize every new piece of information by itself, try to connect it to something you already know. Because when new information has a familiar connection, it becomes easier for your brain to understand it, organize it, and remember it later.
Exactly, Jason. Think about learning a new English word. If you simply look at the word, read the definition once, and move on, it might be difficult to remember. But if you connect that word to a picture, a person, a place, a personal experience, or another English word you already know, suddenly the information becomes more meaningful.
For example, let's say you learn the word delicious. Instead of only memorizing that it means very tasty, imagine your favorite meal and say, "This food is delicious." Now the word is connected to a real experience, a picture in your mind, and a sentence that you can actually use.
That's a great example. You can also connect new words to your daily life. If you learn the word appointment, think about your next appointment and say, "I have an appointment tomorrow." Now you are not just memorizing a dictionary definition. You are connecting the word with something real in your own life.
And this technique works for much more than English vocabulary. You can use it for names, dates, ideas, facts, and even things you need to remember during your daily routine.
Exactly. So whenever you learn something new, ask yourself one simple question. What does this remind me of? That question can help your brain create a bridge between something familiar and something new.
I love that. So instead of saying, I need to memorize this. Say, I need to connect this.
Yes, because when information has a connection and a meaning, it becomes much easier to remember.
Okay, Julia. We've talked about paying attention, repeating information, and connecting new information to something we already know. So I think this is the perfect time to actually practice these techniques with our listeners. Let's make it a little more fun. I'm going to give you 5 things to remember, but you are not allowed to write them down. You have to use your memory.
Oh, okay, Jason. I'm ready, but please don't make it too difficult.
All right, here are the 5 words: apple, bicycle, teacher, coffee, and mountain. Take a few seconds and try to remember all 5 words.
Okay, I could simply repeat them again and again, but I'm going to use our connection technique. Let me create a little story. I'm riding a bicycle up a mountain, carrying an apple, and when I reach the top, my teacher is waiting for me with a cup of coffee.
That is definitely a strange story, Julia, but that's exactly why it works. Now, without looking back, can you remember the 5 words?
Yes! Apple, bicycle, teacher, coffee, and mountain.
Perfect. And notice what happened. You didn't try to memorize 5 separate words. You connected them together and created a funny picture in your mind, so your brain had a little story to follow.
And you can do exactly the same thing when you are learning English. Instead of memorizing 10 unrelated vocabulary words, create a short story using those words. The stranger or more interesting the story is, the easier it may be to remember.
So, everyone listening, try this technique today. Choose 5 new English words, connect them together, and create your own funny story. Then, close your eyes and see if you can remember all 5.
And don't worry if you forget 1 or 2. Just review them, create a stronger connection, and try again. That's how you train your memory. All right, Jason, let's move to another powerful memory technique. And this one is something anyone can do, even if they don't have a teacher, study partner, or classroom. The technique is simple. Teach what you learn. When you explain something to another person, your brain has to remember the information, organize it clearly, and find the right words to communicate the idea.
That's really interesting, Julia, because sometimes you think you understand something until someone asks you to explain it, and suddenly you realize, wait, maybe I don't understand this as well as I thought.
Exactly. And that is actually a good thing, because explaining the information shows you what you know and what you still need to practice. For English learners, this technique can be especially powerful. For example, if you learn the word confident, don't just memorize its meaning. Try to explain it aloud. Confident means feeling sure about yourself. For example, I feel confident when I speak English.
And you can even pretend that you are teaching an imaginary student. You could stand in your room and say, "Today, I'm going to teach you 3 new English words," and then explain each word in your own sentences. It might feel a little funny at first, but it is excellent speaking and memory practice at the same time.
Absolutely. You can also teach a friend, a family member, a classmate, or even record yourself explaining what you learned. The important thing is to retrieve the information from your memory instead of simply reading it again.
So, here's today's challenge. Whenever you learn something new, don't just ask yourself, "Do I understand this?" Ask yourself, "Can I explain this clearly to someone else?"
Because when you teach what you learn, you're not only helping someone else understand, you are also helping your own brain remember it for longer.
Now, Julia, we've talked about paying attention, repeating information, making connections, and teaching what we learn. But there's one more important part of improving memory that people sometimes forget: taking care of your brain. You can study for hours, but if you are constantly tired, stressed, or sitting in front of your books without a break, learning can become much harder.
Absolutely, Jason. Sleep is especially important because your brain needs time to process and organize the information you learn during the day. So, if you study 10 new English words before going to bed, getting good sleep can help your brain keep working with that information.
And you don't have to spend the entire day studying. Taking short breaks can actually help you return to your learning with more energy and attention. For example, you could study English for 25 or 30 minutes. Take a few minutes to stand up, walk around, drink some water, and then come back and continue.
Yes, and physical movement can also help you feel more awake and focused. Even a short walk or a few minutes of stretching can be a simple way to give your mind a break.
So, don't think that improving your memory means studying harder and longer every day. Sometimes the smarter choice is to study with focus, take regular breaks, move your body, and get enough sleep.
Exactly. Remember, your brain is not a machine that can work endlessly without rest. If you take care of it, you give yourself a much better chance to learn, remember, and speak English with confidence.
So tonight, don't forget one simple lesson. A rested brain is a learning brain. All right, Julia, it's time for our quick memory challenge, and this time we want everyone listening to participate. I'm going to give you 5 English words, but don't write them down, don't pause the episode, and don't look back. Just listen carefully and try to create a picture or a little story in your mind. Ready?
I'm ready. And everyone listening, remember what we learned today. Pay attention, make connections, and use your imagination. Okay, Jason, give us the words.
Here they are. Book, window, orange, teacher, and bicycle. I'll say them one more time slowly. Book, window, orange, teacher, bicycle. Now close your eyes for a moment and connect these 5 words together in your imagination.
I can already see a funny story in my mind. I'm sitting next to a window, reading a book, when an orange suddenly rolls across the floor. My teacher jumps on a bicycle to catch it.
That is certainly a strange story, Julia, but that's exactly what we want. Now, everyone, take a few seconds and see if you can remember all 5 words without looking back.
Okay, Jason, I think I've got them. Let me try. Book, window, orange, teacher, and bicycle.
Perfect! And how did you do? If you remembered all 5, fantastic. If you remembered only 3 or 4, that's completely fine. The goal isn't to be perfect. The goal is to practice.
Exactly. And notice how much easier the words became when we connected them into one funny story. That little trick can be incredibly useful when you're learning new English vocabulary.
So, here's your challenge for today. Choose 5 new English words, create one funny story with them, and then test yourself later without looking at your notes.
And the more you practice remembering, the stronger and more confident you can become.
Wow, Julia, what a great conversation. Today we learned that improving your memory is not about having a perfect brain or remembering everything the first time. It's about using simple habits consistently. Pay attention, review information regularly, connect new ideas to what you already know, teach what you learn, and give your brain enough rest.
Exactly, Jason. And if you're learning English, remember that every new word you learn is an opportunity to train your memory and your speaking skills at the same time. Don't be afraid if you forget something. Forgetting is part of learning, and every time you review, practice, and use the information again, you are giving yourself another chance to remember it.
So, start small today. Choose 5 English words, create a funny story with them, say them aloud, and review them again tomorrow. You don't need hours of studying. You just need consistent practice.
And if you enjoyed this episode and found it helpful, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to Easy English Talk, and share it with someone who is learning English.
And tell us in the comments, what is one memory technique you're going to try today?
Keep practicing, keep learning, and don't give up.
Thanks for listening, everyone. We'll see you in the next episode.